Welcome back to the show. Today we're diving into a really cool question. Can a video game, yes, a game, actually help train a better nurse? We're going to unpack the power of simulation in healthcare. It's fascinating stuff. So let me start by asking you something. When you picture a nurse, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Maybe a stethoscope? A syringe? What do you think is their single most powerful, most important tool?
The answer isn't something they can hold in their hands. It's what's going on inside their head. In the crazy, high-stakes, fast-paced world of healthcare, the ability to think clearly under immense pressure is absolutely 100% critical. So what kind of thinking are we even talking about here? Because it's not just about memorizing facts from a textbook. It's a very specific, very active kind of skill.
It's called reflective thinking, and you can think of it like a loop. You take what you already know from books and past experiences, you apply it to a situation, you see what happens, and then, and this is the key part, you learn from it and adapt. It's all about constantly upgrading your own thinking process.
And this skill, it actually builds up in stages. You start with what's called habitual action, things you do on autopilot. Then comes understanding, where you're actively using what you know. But the real magic, the real growth, happens at levels 3 and 4. That's reflection, where you start evaluating things and seeing new angles. And then the highest level, critical reflection. That's where you're actually willing to change your most basic beliefs based on new information. That's deep learning.
Okay, so here's the problem. A study over in Turkey found that even senior nursing students, we're talking about people about to graduate and enter this incredibly demanding profession, their reflective thinking skills were just average. That's a huge deal. It means this absolutely essential skill just wasn't as developed as it needed to be.
So that leads us to a pretty wild and innovative question. If the old school ways of teaching aren't quite cutting it, could something totally different, something like a game, actually teach this kind of high-level thinking? Now, hold on. We're not talking about just any old video game here. These educational simulations are really structured experiences. The student is right at the center of it all. They learn by doing, by solving problems, not just by listening to a lecture. They get to take on roles, they have clear goals, and critically, they create a safe space to try things, to make mistakes, and to learn from them, which is something you definitely can't do with a real patient. And maybe most important of all, they always end with a debriefing to talk about what just happened. So how did this actually play out in the real world? Well, researchers put this whole idea to the test with a really cool experiment built around a simulation game called The Ward.
Okay, so here's the setup. They got 23 senior nursing students to play this game, The Ward, once a week for 7 weeks straight. And the students weren't just playing as themselves. They had to take on these specific high-pressure roles like ward manager or clinical nurse. They had to deal with everything: patient care, tight budgets, staff morale, leadership, the whole shebang. So, they played this game for 7 weeks. The big question is, did it work? Did it actually change the way these students thought? Well, let me tell you, the results were pretty staggering. Just look at these numbers. Before the game, the students' average score on the reflective thinking test was about a 39.7. After just 7 weeks of playing the ward, that score jumped, and I mean jumped, to 67.39. That is a massive improvement. And this chart just makes it so clear. You do not need to be a data scientist to see what's going on here. The after bar just absolutely dwarfs the before bar. There's no question the game had a huge, profound impact. But here's what's really, really interesting. When you break it down, the scores didn't just go up overall. They improved across every single level of thinking. I mean, just look at the jump in reflection, and especially in critical reflection. That score more than doubled. The game wasn't just patching holes. It was building their skills from the ground up. Okay, so the numbers tell us what happened, but they don't really tell us how or why, right? Why was this game so incredibly effective? Well, for that, we've got to look at what the students themselves actually had to say about it. And this, right here, is a giant piece of the puzzle. The students weren't just slogging through another required lesson. They were actually having fun. And the research found that this enjoyable, low-stress environment made the learning feel completely natural, not forced at all. And here is the other key ingredient, straight from one of the students. It was the teamwork. It was working together. They could see problems from totally different angles. They could challenge each other's ideas in a safe way and figure out the best path forward as a group.
So the study basically uncovered this really clear roadmap for growth. It all kicked off with teamwork and collaboration. That experience made the students realize, hey, here's what I don't know, which in turn opened their minds to new perspectives. And you know what all of that did? It built up their self-confidence. It's an amazing cycle.
You know, the results of this one experiment have much, much bigger implications. It really forces us to step back and reconsider the tools we use for education, especially in professions where critical thinking can literally be a matter of life and death.
And this is exactly why it matters so much. This student's quote just hits the nail on the head. For them, the game wasn't just a game. It was practice. It was like a bridge connecting the safety of the classroom to the messy, complex, unpredictable reality of a real hospital ward.
So, when you put it all together, the impact is just undeniable. The game didn't just teach one little thing. It helped develop better decision-making, it broadened their perspectives, it boosted their motivation and their confidence. It hit its main goal by dramatically improving the exact kind of thinking that's so vital for being a great nurse.
So the final takeaway from all this research is just crystal clear. These simulation games, when they're well designed, are not just for fun. They are serious, powerful educational tools. They can create these safe, engaging sandboxes to practice the exact kinds of complex cognitive skills that are so hard to teach in a normal classroom.
And that leaves us with one last big, thought-provoking question to chew on. If a game can help train better nurses, what about pilots, or firefighters, or surgeons? What other high-stakes profession out there could be completely revolutionized just by rethinking how we learn? It's something to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in.